Everybody, welcome. Welcome to the Spring Fever Garden Forums, where we connect you, the gardener, with the experts at North Dakota State University. My name is Tom Kolb. I'm an extension horticulturist in the Department of Plant Sciences. Tonight is the fourth and final of our forums for this spring, and we have some special topics for you tonight. Now, the format that we use is the one we always use. We start with about a 20-minute presentation, and we follow that up with about 10 to 15 minutes of your questions and answers. So let's get started and talk about some ghostly insects that fly in our gardens. Moths are most active at night pollinating when the bees are inactive. So here to teach us about moths and how to attract them is Dr. Jan Knodel. Jan is the professor and extension entomologist at North Dakota State University. For the past 26 years, she's provided leadership in extension entomology and the North Dakota Integrated Pest Management, that's IPM program. Activities focus on developing IPM strategies for insect pests of crops and gardens. And Jan also studies pollinators in gardens and field crops, which include bees and syrphid flies and butterflies. So Jan, welcome to the forum.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, my name's Jan Knodel. I'm a professor and extension entomologist at NDSU here. And let's get started talking about the moths. So, as mentioned, they are night-flying insects and ones we probably don't see, readily unless you're outside at night. But usually it's the honeybees and the native bees that are our super pollinators. But new research has shown that these moths are pretty good at pollinating than previously thought. And as you can see in the close-up picture here of the head of the insect, you see they have lots of hairs or trichomes on the body and even on their eyes. And they use this to pick up pollen and then pollinate a flower. And they're particularly hairy on the underbelly, so they're pretty effective pollinators is what the research is showing. Another thing is we forget about the role they play in our ecosystems. They're an excellent food source for many different animals and amphibians, bat, frogs, small owls, songbirds, flying squirrels, and even grizzly bears. We have the army cutworm here in western North Dakota, and it emerges in the summer from overwintering, and it will take up out of our wheat fields and fly all the way to the Rocky Mountains. And there they'll mate, and the females will have eggs developing inside the body, and they hide and rest underneath the rocky cliffs there in the mountains. And the grizzly bears just love feeding on these moths because they're an excellent source of protein for the grizzly bear that needs to fatten up for the long winter. So then eventually, in the fall, these moths will get back up on the winds and fly back to the prairie states and lay their eggs, unfortunately, in our fields again. So the moth eye is very unique compared to other insects. You can see that there's two eyes, one on each side of the head. These are the large compound eyes, and each one of the compound eye has thousands of individual lenses called ommatidium. And if you take a look at the diagram at the bottom, you can see that the moth's eye has a bunch of small bumps on the surface. And this plays an important role as an anti-reflective film. And this allows the moth to see better at nighttime because there's limited light. So the more light it has getting into the eye, the easier it is for it to see. And also, we've learned from the moth eye. We use this anti-reflective film on many of our products that we use today, eyeglasses, computer screens, windows. It's used on a lot of different things to improve vision. So it's very effective, the moth eye, at detecting movements. They can also see various colors, and some species can detect ultraviolet light. Let's talk a little bit about the mouth parts of the moth. They use their mouth parts for siphoning and probing into the flowers and then sucking out the nectar, which they feed on. And the mouth part is this long proboscis tube that comes out of the front part of the head. When they're not getting ready to feed on a flower and they're resting, they roll it up underneath the head. And the tube is made up of two structures, the galea, and that forms the food canal there in the middle. And many of the mouth parts on moths, because they use this proboscis, is not functional. So they just have that tube structure. Now, the longest moth tongue, I knew someone would ask this as a question, so I'm going to throw it in as a slide, is the Walsh's sphinx moth, which was a new species that was recently described in 2021. And this moth is from Madagascar, and it has a 12-inch tongue. It's just unbelievable. And it even puzzled Charles Darwin and Wallace on how does this moth feed with such a long tongue. And they didn't know, what was going on until they found the Madagascar star orchid with the extremely long nectar tube, as you can see in the picture. And this moth is fairly specific to this flower. And compared to the one over on the right, the Morgan sphinx moth from Africa, you can see its tongue is only about 4 inches, which is more common length for the sphinx moth tongue. And the life cycle of moths. They undergo complete metamorphosis, and they have 4 different life stages: the moth, adult, and then the eggs, and then the larvae or the caterpillar, and then the cocoon or the pupae. And each stage, as you can see, looks different. And, they kind of function differently too. The caterpillar, for example, is the one that causes the damage to the plant. Feeding on plants and defoliation is a common thing. And they also tunnel into fruits and tunnel into stalks. So they do most of the damage to plants. But if you're like me and you're gardening for the pollinators, you want to see that. And then the pupae or the cocoon is a stage where the whole insect undergoes transformation from the larvae to the beautiful adult moth. So, and you can see the adult moth is, for feeding on nectar of plants and transferring pollen. And a lot of them have different patterns that you'll see on the wings that we use in identification. So it's just helpful to understand. And each moth can have one generation or one complete life cycle per year, but some species will have, up to 3 or more. It just depends on the species and how fast its reproduction is. So moths are often compared to butterflies because the order Lepidoptera includes both moth and butterflies. Worldwide, we have over 140,000 known moth species worldwide, and then butterflies, it's only 20,000 species worldwide. And then here in North America, we have, I've seen 11 to 12,000 known moth species in North America, And for the butterflies, it's about 800 known butterfly species in North America. And then another big difference is the moths are night flying, and some will fly during the day, like, during dusk or dawn, but they prefer the night. And then the butterflies, which we probably see more frequently, are the day flying. Uh, just day flying when it's nice and sunny and not windy. That's the best time to see a butterfly. None of the moths will hide during the day. Then also the antennae are different. You can see the Luna moth. That's kind of a cute picture. Feathery or branched antenna. And then like the yellow colored skate moth there next to it has the straight filament antenna. So they can vary, but the butterflies always have the knob antenna. Some of them have hooks on the end, but there's always some sort of knob there, even if it is a hook shape. Then the body of a moth, they're very robust and fuzzy, both the larvae and the adult. And the adult will have real beautiful wing patterns and dark markings sometimes on the wings. And then butterflies, usually much more smooth skin, the larvae. They don't have as many, hardly any hairs. And the body of the adult butterfly is very slender. And for the wings at rest, the moth will spread them out when they're resting to the side, whereas the butterfly will hold up those wings together, like this monarch is showing in the picture. And you can see here the monarch, they kind of have a little bit of a hook in their clubbed antenna. So and the moths are dark colored, usually the browns, black, olive greens, and with markings on the wings. But there is always exceptions in the insect world. It's such a diverse group of animals. Here's the primrose moth, the beautiful pink and yellow. And then the butterflies, the bright orange and black and white of the viceroy and the red admiral there. So just to give you a little background on how to identify larvae or caterpillars, because they are difficult to identify, from other orders of insects. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Again, moths and butterflies belong to the order Lepidoptera, and we'll have several different structures here. We have the head, and they always have both moth and butterfly caterpillars a well-developed head capsule. Then right behind the head is the thorax, and we have three segments or three pairs of thoracic legs. And then the abdomen with all the different segments. And most of the abdomen will have abdominal prolegs and an anal proleg. And on the prolegs is crochets. And these are used in identification. You can see there's all different sizes. Some are long, some are short. Sometimes they only go halfway around the circle. Other times they go completely around the circle. And sometimes they're short, long, short, long. So these are very useful in identification. However, you do need a fairly high-powered microscope, like 50x to magnification to see these. And if you just collect a larvae regularly and drop it into like alcohol, 80%, you won't be able to see the crochets because they need to be dropped into boiling water to get them to expand and open up. So we usually drop a Lepidoptera caterpillar into boiling water to properly preserve it, and then you'll be able to see the crochets for identification. So we need to be able to identify a moth caterpillar from other orders of insect like the Hymenoptera, which is the bees, wasps, sawflies, and ants. And here you see a sawfly larvae. So starting with the Lepidoptera moth larvae, this is a hermit sphinx moth. And generally, they will have 2 to 6 or 2 to 5 pairs of prolegs on the abdomen. And then also they have that head capsule we talked about and 3 pairs of thoracic legs. And on the sphinx moths, they also have often a horn. And the body skin can be smooth, like in the picture here, hairy, or even spiny, and size can be very variable in the lap order. We have Microlepidoptera moths that are, when they're mature, only 2 to 3 millimeters long. So, and of course, this one is a very large one, 3 more inches. So then for the sawfly larvae, one of the characteristics is they have 6 or more pairs of prolegs. And you can see they're much smaller. And also they don't have any crochets on the proleg. And the skin's very smooth. And when it's mature, the maximum length, it'll be about 1 inch. So, and also, again, if you have the scope to look for the crochets, again, you'll be able to see that this is a lep larvae just based on the presence of that feature. So now we're going to move on to the Coleoptera, the beetle. And these are white grubs in the top. The adult is the May and June beetle that you have in the spring feeding on your trees. And the white grubs, as you can see, have a nice head capsule, and they have 3 pairs of thoracic legs and no prolegs. So in the body shape in the Coleoptera beetles is very diverse. There's a lot of diversity, and I'll just show you a few types. Down here we have the wireworms, a very long, slender larval body with, you notice the yellow color, that's sclerotization. Oh, it's very hard. Here's the head. And then at the tail end, it has a number of different structures that we use for identification of wireworms. And again, this is a pest that feeds on the root systems and will tunnel up into the stalks of seedling plants and often will kill them. And it loves tuber crops like potatoes, sweet potatoes, and so forth. Staying in the beetles, the Coleoptera, this is the larvae of the Colorado potato beetle on the right top picture. You can see it's grub-like, has the head capsule and the thoracic legs again. And here's a lady beetle larva, kind of alligator-like, the 3 pairs of thoracic legs, and it has the orange and black coloration that you see with the adult beetles. Okay, moving on to the Diptera, which is the flies. This is a blowfly, and we call fly larvae maggot. And the reason why we call them maggots is because they have no legs, no prolegs, and no head capsule. You do see this dark structure here inside the body of the maggot, and this is the mandibles that it can evert for feeding either on organic matter or on dead animals like the blowflies do. And they help with decomposition of both plant matter and animal matter. Very important role. So we'll go through a couple of the common moth families that you're likely to see when you're out working in your garden. And over on the left is the leafy spurge hawk moth, which feeds on our noxious leafy spurge. It's a beautiful moth, olive green in color with some lines through the wings, and the larvae is equally distinguished and has the horn that most sphinx caterpillars have. And then here's the white line sphinx. This is very common. You can see this nice white line through the forewings, and the pink hind wings are good for identifying this species, as well as the stripes on the body of the moth. And here's the caterpillar, again, being sphinx, has that horn. And sphinx moths are very fast flying. They've done some research studies with some flight meals, and they found that they can fly up to 30 miles per hour. It's amazing. So we'll move on to the Noctuidae family. Noctu means night, which means these are night flying insects, owlets, cutworms, and underworms. And just like the wireworms, these cutworms are pests, and you probably don't want them around because they will feed on in the larval stage on your plants. They'll feed on roots. They will feed on the stem during the seedling stage and cut it off at the base so the plant will fall over. You'll see the dead plant on the soil. And then also there's a whole nother group of cutworms that are called climbing cutworms, and they will climb up onto your plant and cause foliar defoliation of your plant and chew on fruits and flowers as well. And this is another noctuid, the winter cutworm, or the large yellow underwing. And here you can see some of the distinguished markings, and the band here where they got the name underwing is usually always a different color with some sort of a band. That means it's an underwing. Whereas the cutworm is more drab, but does have some nice markings on the forewing. Moving on to the uh, Airbididae family, it used to be called Lamantridae. These are the tussock caterpillars, and this is the milkweed tussock moth on your left, and the caterpillar. So we do have things other than the monarch that likes to feed on our milkweeds. This one's pretty nondescript, as you can see, a dull brown, but the caterpillars are beautiful. They have the orange, black, and white coloration, meaning alarm to predators or danger, so they won't be eaten. And they also have a lot of hairs on the bodies. And I love this one here, the pale tussock moth. It's just beautiful, and a very nice pattern there with the hairs. Salt marsh caterpillar, again in the Airbididae family. It used to be called Arctidae. It's tiger moth and lichen moths. And these are one of my favorite. I just love the spotting on the white background, and then this yellow and the dark banding on the abdomen, and the yellow colored hairy caterpillar. And then here's the banded woolly bear. And there's all the fork layer around the caterpillar. At the length of the brown band will indicate, how severe our winter's going to be. So the more black you have and the less uh, brown means you're going to have a more severe winter. Of course, it's just folklore, but it's kind of interesting story that goes with it. So moths do need host plants that you can plant to attract them into your garden. Usually they need a white or pale color. It's easier to see at night. Datura, morning glory, common even primrose are all some examples of things you can plant. They love the long tubular flowers with lots of nectar, and some other species like more of a landing platform with clusters of flowers. And they do prefer the ones that open late in the afternoon or even the evening. And then don't forget about the caterpillars, and they often need a different host plant, and it could be a tree. So remember to plant those as well so you can support both the adult and the larval caterpillar. So most of the moths are just generalists for nectar feeders, but there is a few that are specialists, like the Luna or the yucca moth on the yucca plant is a specialist feeder just on that plant, and the larvae will feed on that seed. So they're very special. Make sure that that plant gets a different plant will get pollinated, so their young will have a seed to feed on. And here we have many native plants you can select from to support, the moths either as an adult or a caterpillar. Here's some examples in the pictures. And moon gardens. This is something you can plant for a moth to attract, again, the white or silvery foliage, any, white variety, white phlox, hydrangea, moonflowers, cosmos. And they just love fragrant flowers. So anything with a strong scent will draw them in. And again, you don't want a lot of bright light. You can just have some soft lighting, mainly rely just on that moonlight. And it'll be a nice place for you to just relax and have some peaceful time. You can add a shallow bird bath, which will give the moths some water to feed on, or some wind chimes, but try to avoid these bright lights here. These are not good for the moths. In fact, all this light pollution has been leading to a decline in moths and fireflies and even birds, like this indigo bunting that migrates at night and uses the stars for migration. So we gotta just turn these lights off. There's way too much light pollution. And, there is a turn out the lights program for bird migration now because we're seeing such an increase in bird kills, into high rises and tall buildings. They fly right into the windows. So, but for a moth, it sees that outdoor light and it thinks it's the rising sun. So it's attracted to it and it's going to try to find a place to hide, and it gets very confused and then flies the circles. I'm sure you've seen them doing circles around your outdoor lights at night. And then we have the newer LED lights, which are brighter yet, and they have led to an increase in mortality of many different insects. So for your outdoor lights, I recommend using warmer colors and dim voltage lighting or motion activated lights that will turn off. So, and I used a number of resources on moths to put this presentation together, and I found the Xerces website to be excellent. They have a number of blogs about moths. Just search for moths. And then South Dakota State University Extension has a good article in their newsletter on flowers and host plants for moths. The U.S. Forest Service on moth pollination. So just type those in and U.S. Forest Service and the article will come up. And then there is a book on gardening for moths by McCormick and Godfrey. And then I also like the Xerces book, Gardening for Butterfly. There's a whole chapter in there on just moths. And then if you want to learn how to identify all those confusing caterpillars you see out there, get this book, Caterpillars of Eastern North America by David Wagner. It's just excellent for identification. It has many color pictures. So, and I'd like to show you this picture. I had this on my maple tree, and it's called the unicorn caterpillar. It's just beautiful and very cryptic. So a lot of the moth species do have cryptic larvae stages, especially where they blend in with the foliage. And with that, I'd like to end and thank you for your attention.
Hey, thanks, Jan. We do have some minutes here to answer some questions. Got a couple of them already, Jan. How about, are there any vegetables in the garden that could be pollinated by moths?
Yeah, any of the tubular flowers, pumpkins, uh, any of those. Maybe even I've seen cucumbers and any of the squash family.
Okay.
Just,
How about do you want to talk a little bit about with our in general, our winter extremes are less than what they were when you talk about decades and decades. Has this affected the fact that maybe new moths are coming into North Dakota? Like there's a question that someone from Lamore County says, has the white line sphinx moth, has that always been here? Or
yeah,
they said it's only seen for the last 5 or 10 years.
yeah, that's a real common sphinx moth, the white line
Yep.
sphinx moth. So it's pretty much, I think, what you can find it throughout North America and probably worldwide. But again, we are seeing with the warming winters that the moths are overwintering further north, not necessarily in North Dakota yet, but maybe in Nebraska instead of Texas. So it's going to affect how early they get here. So we're going to see the moths coming up earlier,
Okay.
the migratory ones. And then the ones that overwinter here are pretty much winter hardy. Some of them go into the soil, other of them leaf debris and shelter bound areas that gets more snow. And so they're pretty well protected. And then a lot of insects have an antifreeze type in their blood that is circulated during the winter, which prevents them from freezing.
I think I have a little antifreeze in my blood coming in January. It's like
Yeah,
you're building your hardiness a little bit. And
yes,
so like, nowadays everybody's outside with short pants on and everything, even though it's 30 degrees.
not me.
Yeah, I'm old and cold. That's the way life goes. How about Jan, do you have any special tips on attracting Cecropia moths?
Oh, yeah, they like a assortment of different trees for the larvae. I think it's maples, ash. I didn't bring my book to look that up, but if you get that one book on the larvae caterpillars, it lists all the host plants. That's one of the things I like about that book, and also the distribution where it's found, and it's also how to identify it and characteristics. But yeah, I think most of the moths are generalists. So if you're planting a pollinator garden, you're most likely putting in, something that the moths like: Joe Pye weed, lead plant, Liatris, blazing star. All those are things that the moths like, but especially the sphinx moth, love the tubular flowers. So you'd want some phlox and datura and moonflowers and
Speaking of flowers, I my favorite is woodland tobacco, and
oh
that's
yes, that's a good one too.
yeah, only the lonely is the variety, and it grows about six
Oh
feet tall, and it is just a standout in the garden. I used to have hundreds of annuals at a display garden. As soon as everybody got there, they would immediately go to that woodland tobacco or Nicotiana. It's a type of
yeah.
Nicotiana,
Oh,
and
okay.
and it's a beautiful white flowers at night.
Oh,
It's
nice. I'll have to
yeah.
look for that.
Oh, those hornworms love them. So I love stepping on hornworms. How about do you advocate for us not to use path lights or spotlights?
Yes, I'm giving a longer talk on Field to Fork, and I'll be talking a little more about the lights there and more insects to AD and flowers and things. But yes, all those lights you see, those cute little lights that you can put along your pathways, they are not good for moths. They're just damaging to the
Hmm.
moth. It confuses them. They can't find the flowers, and then they end up expending a lot of energy and often dying. and avoid using those uh, zappers as well. They are just terrible for moths. There was some studies where they looked at all the insects captured all summer from the electric zappers, thinking that they're going to be killing a lot of mosquitoes and other biting flies in the trap, but they ended up with 13,000 other species of insects that were mainly good insects, beneficial insects, moths, and pollinators, and they only captured 13 mosquitoes.
Zippers
So,
outdoors don't work.
yeah,
They're not
they
effective.
don't work at all for getting your
Uh,
mosquitoes and biting things. So please don't
yeah.
put those out.
They-
It's killing millions of the good insects we want.
okay, this person has large green caterpillars on their grapevines. You know what that is?
Oh, yeah, that's the Ackerman Sphinx moth
Okay.
caterpillar. It
And
likes
they're
Virginia creeper and grapevines.
okay. How about this person seems to be attacked by moths, and it says like they always go for their head and ears. So is that true? The moths go after heads and ears?
No, they're unless you're wearing some perfume. Those antenna I was showing you, those beautiful feathery antenna, they're used as a sensory, like our nose and everything. So they can smell. They use those for communicating with other moths and finding females. So if you had some sort of scent on you, perfume or cologne, um, that could attract them. Hairspray.
Okay. About so there's a question on there's a picture of do you want to know about that white line sphinx moth? Is that a beneficial critter or
Yeah.
harmful? Beneficial.
Uh, no, I believe the host plant is again an assortment of our hardwood trees. So maples, ash, uh, but anyway, a lot of different birches, a lot of different trees. So the caterpillar will feed on that, but generally they don't lay the eggs, all in one spot. So I've, unless it's a really young tree, it would
Never heard of
not
a
be a
moth.
pest at all. Yeah,
No moth's gonna kill a tree. Come on.
yeah.
What's that caterpillar they always see in their chokecherry tree?
Oh, it's probably the tent caterpillar.
Yep,
Um,
fall
it
webworm.
cut, yeah, fall webworm doesn't make a web.
Yep. How
Yeah.
about are Cecropia caterpillars common in our area?
Yeah, they're quite common. I get some pictures every year sent to me. I do quite a few insect IDs every year, about 300, mainly in the summer. And yeah, I always get Cecropia moth, either the larvae or the moth picture sent in to me, what it is and
Hey, Jen, are you sure that maggots only feed on decaying organic material or decaying animals? Are you sure about
well,
that?
there's a wide diversity in the maggot group. There is some pests like onion maggot, and they're
Oh, yeah.
feeding on the roots of onion, and they will get into the bulbs if they're like it's wet, they need moisture
Yeah,
and cool soils they could get into the bulbs and then they'll start to decay.
yeah. They always go after the organic matter, though, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I think you got it all covered here,
Oh,
Jan.
okay.
Oh, I got one last question. Is there a red? That was that red cat. Does this white line sphinx have a red caterpillar? Is that the picture?
Oh, those are that is blossoms. That was not part of the caterpillar. That's fuchsia blossoms that
Okay.
haven't bloomed yet.
Okay. No wonder it's so colorful. But
Yeah,
actually, the big thing I found tonight is how beautiful many of these moths are. I thought they're
yeah.
just
Oh, they are.
ugly, dirt colored, olive, but like, man, there's some really spectacular ones out there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jan, one last question. How do you get rid of a radish maggot? Oh, we're not, okay. That's a hard
All
one.
right.
Crop
Yeah, what crop?
rotation,
Yeah,
crop
cropper.
rotation, do
Yep.
that. That's the way to handle that. Okay, so thank you, Jan. Thanks for getting us off
Yeah,
to a
thank
great
you,
start. That
everyone.
was really fascinating.
Have a good night.